Hi, welcome back to Addictions class. We are going to be covering cognitive distortions today. We've done 1 through 5 on a previous video. We're going to do 6 through 10 today. It doesn't matter if you didn't see the other one. We're going to work things in such a way that whether that one stands alone, this one stands alone, and while you may not have all the words to describe all of them when we get to the process I describe at the end, you'll still be able to make a lot of headway. So don't have any stress about that. We are going to skip the deep breathing on the front of this one because I think we'll run out of time. With this GoPro camera, I definitely have to keep it in a very limited time frame, and I need to start my timer. So, and I just got interrupted, so I had to start a whole new video because melding them together, nightmare. So if I can just boop, start it, stop it, we're in good shape to go. So remember the reason we talk about cognitive distortions and monitoring our inner chatter and changing what we say to ourselves is because what we say to ourselves matters. It doesn't just change how we think. It doesn't just change how we feel. It doesn't just change how we act. It actually changes our brains, our bodies, right? So the way you think about things can either lead to good things happening in your neurotransmitters and your neurology, your electrical system, your neurons and how they wire together, because neurons that fire together wire together, right? They become connected. So all of those things can, you change your brain by how you think, and then when your brain is changed, it can help. So again, we're talking about healing your whole self. This is recovering your whole self. And cognitive distortions are something that we all have. So working on them is a really good thing. So the first one we're going to talk about today is magnification or minimization, right? So this is either overemphasizing something or underemphasizing something. And what people often do with magnification is something small happens and you blow it up into something way bigger than it is, right? Your partner, maybe they get their feelings a little hurt and they say, wow, that hurt my feelings. And instead of just taking that as, wow, oh, I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings, and just responding to it in the moment, you blow it into something big. Oh my God. And you can do a couple of things. You can catastrophize like, oh my God, I'm such a shitty spouse, or I'm, whatever the deal is, you can turn this into something huge. Or you can minimize. Wow, that was nothing. I can't believe that bugged you, right? Also a thinking distortion. Well, that shouldn't bug that person. We'll get to the shoulds in a little bit. But, it can be a big thing. It can be a little thing. The joke is always, oh my God, I broke a nail, which, as you guys know from my hands, is not an issue for me. But for people, like, oh, breaking a nail is not as big as getting diagnosed with cancer. But when you hear some people talk, they act as if it is, right? So these are both thinking distortions. You also minimize, a lot of times you can minimize the positives. So, say you went to, well, I've got a parole board example coming up. But say you went to the parole board and actually got a better deal than you kind of anticipated. Some people kind of minimize that. Yeah, but I still have to do it, da-da-da-da. And you're like, okay, you went in there thinking you were going to get, something up here, you got something down here, and now you're minimizing that. And then you use it to say like, yeah, but still, this whole system, if I get into a halfway houses never work, they don't work for anybody, I'm going to end up back in here, right? You seeing how all this stuff can start to spin? So, antidotes for magnification or minimization. I'm holding these up so you can see them, and then I have the notes in front of me, but that way if you're taking notes, gives you plenty of time. Antidotes, see the gray area. Remember, lots of gray, or even the rainbow. If you like the rainbow, all the colors in between. Things are usually not all good or all bad. And a lot, if we see things good or bad, is our perspective. And our perspective is based on our experience. And that's why adults are meant to have a broader perspective on things because they have more experience. So something that may in fact be a big deal to a child. So it's not magnifying when a child is devastated by it. See, when your 2-year-old gets really upset about something that you think is so small, see, they're so small and they haven't had a lot of experience. So for them, it might be a big deal, even though to you it's not. So just remember these things too when you're doing the parenting part, that you don't say to your kid, like a little 2-year-old, well, you're just magnifying that. You're just catastrophizing. That's not a big deal. If their favorite cup breaks when they're 2, it's going to break their heart. Whereas adults might go, dang, that sucks. But, we've been through things before. Does that make sense? Yeah, minimization can also be, but think of how often, now what I'm going to use an example of in our culture, people minimize grief. People often expect you to be over grief like really quickly. Well, yeah, I mean, I know your dad died and all, and yeah, that's rough, but it's been 3 weeks. Shouldn't you be back to normal? Right? And you're like, wow, you're going to minimize the impact of losing someone who I've had my whole life? And for most of us, our fathers, whether they were there or not, they have an impact by their presence or their absence, right? So that kind of thing. So we don't want to blow things up too big, but we also don't want to have things too small. Gray areas. Truth is somewhere in the middle. And again, a lot of these, you notice the antidotes are the same, that we don't want to see the truth is, and the truth is not always smack dab in the middle. You know, it's like in couples therapy where the issue might be, you know, one partner is, you know, they use and they also become abusive and all that. And what does the other partner do? Oh, they squeeze the toothpaste in the middle. And they'll often try to come to the couples therapist. Well, they're not perfect either. They do this. And you're like, yeah, but on orders of magnitude, we're not gonna say this is a 50-50 deal, because sometimes in a relationship problem, I might have more than 50% of it. I might be responsible for more than 50% of the mess this relationship's in, or you might be responsible for more than 50%, or on certain issues we might be on different levels. Does that make sense? So that sliding thing where sometimes it's a 90-10, sometimes it's an 80-20, 60-40, but it's not just, you know, straight down the middle. And then yes, and what I'm calling this right now is living in the paradox. A big thinking distortion, and our country's in it right now, people. Our country is in it, where it's either or. You're either this or you're that. And there's no middle ground. And the reality is we're way more complicated than that. We're not all, you know, we're not totally liberal or totally conservative, and we're not totally on this side of things or totally on that side of things. Again, one of the ways I'm seeing this right now with this pandemic is some people are like, well, either we go back to life exactly as it was, or we've lost all our freedoms. And it's like, wow, there's a whole lot of gray area in there. Maybe we open some things and not others, or maybe we open things and still have social distancing, and maybe we open things and have social distancing and have masks, right? And maybe while we're doing that, some people do stay isolated because they're more at risk. If I'm a chemotherapy patient right now and I've got an immune system, I'm not going to go out in a big crowd, you know. But maybe, you know, some people are like, we have to totally keep down and lock down forever until this thing is gone, and then some people are like, we have to totally go back to it the way it was. But I think if you really sit down and talk with most rational Americans, and I still believe, okay, maybe this is my optimism, but I still believe most of us are, is that most of us, we're all working with this, but we're having to live in this paradox right now because we don't have a clear-cut answer. And uncertainty really makes people who don't have good boundaries and don't have good cognitive skills, uncertainty makes them run to black and white thinking. So that's one of those things. This is a prime time. If you can learn how to manage that black and white thinking in this COVID time, you could really be ahead of the game. So not minimizing, not maximizing. That's number 6. Now, number 7, emotional reasoning. Ooh, do I like this one. Confusing feelings for facts. Just because I believe it, it must be true. Or just because I feel it, it must be true. And I have to act a certain way because of a feeling, okay? So let's give some examples. I may believe that my spouse is having an affair, right? And because I believe it, it must be true, right? Maybe it's not true. Maybe, let's think through, maybe I've been cheated on in the past, right? And maybe that old stuff is still there and I've never really dealt with it. So I look at everything through that lens, okay? And I've worked with couples where this is true. I mean, there was a woman one time I worked with, and this was an abusive situation, where she literally got up during the night to go to the bathroom, which was attached to their bedroom. And when she came back, he said, "Where have you been? You're cheating with someone." She's like, I was right there. I went to the bathroom. That was her moment when she realized, I got to get out because this is really dangerous. I mean, because that's clearly way on that end, because he was so insanely jealous. I'm feeling this jealousy. It must be true, right? Feelings for facts, right? Well, no, I just know that it's right. I just feel that way. Oh, that person's doing a terrible job, right? Say you're working. That person's doing a terrible job. Well, how do you know? Well, I can tell. I can tell. Well, okay. Tell me what they're doing wrong. Well, you just know. You know, right? Or that's a terrible person. Or whatever the deal is. We confuse those feelings for facts. And so, antidotes, identify what are the feelings and what are the facts in this situation. And feelings are actual feelings. So don't say, I feel like you are a jerk. That's not a feeling. I can't feel you're like a jerk in my body. Where do I feel you're like a jerk? No, I might feel frustrated. I might feel mad. I might feel deceived. I might feel untrusting, right? And then what facts might lead to that? I feel untrusting because you told me you were at place X, and then on your Facebook, you show up at point Y, right? The facts are this, but here's my feelings. So feelings are actual feeling words. Remember we did those lists? Feeling words. If you don't have a list, start one now. Sad, mad, glad, and scared, the basics, and then you add to them, joyful, contempt, disgust, enjoyment, pleasure, all those things. So really identify what's a feeling and what's a fact. 2, alternative explanations. I often ask for 5. What are 5 alternative explanations for this situation, right? Back to the facts one. And if there are some facts, like there are flat earthers right now, who are like, well, because I believe the earth is flat, it must be so. Except we have so much evidence that it's not, that I'm like, because see, when you keep believing lies in place of facts, right? And you make this whole rationale, that's called paranoia. Okay, so we're not going to support paranoia. So something factually happened, it happened, right? At night, it gets dark. Now, I can say it doesn't get dark at night because I turn the lights on in my house, but if I go outside, it gets dark at night. I mean, there are facts. So some people say like, well, like everyone has the right to their own opinion and all opinions are equal. That's not true. There are knowledgeable opinions and there are not knowledgeable opinions. Now, I can have any feeling I want. So I'm the expert on my own feelings. You're the expert on your own feelings, right? But opinions, I always joke, the Broncos are not calling me, for help with their defensive line. I could have an opinion on it, but because it would not be an educated opinion, I don't really follow football, I don't know all the ins and outs, they would be kind of crazy to call me and put their season in my hands. My opinion doesn't matter as much as someone who studied the game, who knows the players, who knows their strengths, who knows their weaknesses. So there are informed opinions and then there are uninformed opinions. So that goes all along with this emotional reasoning. And when people get to the level of name calling and all those kinds of things, just trying to say something to get to you, that's definitely emotional reasoning. We rely on it way too much in our culture right now. So I'm saying have your emotions, but keep your reasoning based on other things. So alternative explanations, possible actions, more than one. Because if you think, well, I can't do this, and people often say, well, I just can't go back to that person. And I always say, yeah, you can. They're like, no, I can't. No, you could. Many people go back to bad relationships. I can go back to the person. Then you ask yourself, do I want to? So I could go back under these conditions. There's one alternative. And it might be, I go back under the condition that, we both go to therapy. Or you could say, I can go back once we've both been clean and sober for a certain period of time. Or you can say, I choose not to go back to that person because when we've done it too quickly before, this and this happened. So instead of going back to that person right now, I'm going to see them sometimes and see how it goes. I mean, there's always other alternatives. So come up with possible actions, more than one, to deal with this emotional reasoning. Now, the next one, number 8, because then I want to go through this process. Should statements. We call this shoulding on yourself or shoulding on others. Not a good thing. Think of that image. Yeah, I don't like to be should upon, right? Should statements are, things should be done this way. It's a very rigid stance. It says, I have the right to judge, I have the right to decide. Expectations without investigation, right? So I have these expectations, you should do it this way, I should do it this way, I should feel this way, you should feel that way, it should go this way. But having these expectations without investigating things and having unrealistic expectations. So a lot of the shoulds come from that very demanding voice in our head. Sometimes we use should statements as a misguided attempt to motivate. Now we think should statements motivate us, right? I should, first of the year, what does everyone say? I should lose weight. Does that really motivate anyone? No. Okay, and we'll talk, we have a different one coming up on what's your why and what's your why not. So shoulds don't really motivate. You should do it this way. Because a lot of times people now I know none of you in this class, right? There's a overgeneralization, none of you. None of you in this class are like that, right? Like someone says, well, you should do it this way. And you're like, hold my beer, I'm not doing it that way, right? That's a lot of people get resistant to shoulds, including in our own brain. We might say, well, I should do this or I should do that. And we often get resistant. So instead, antidotes, use the words could, would, choose to, want to. I could do this, not I should. I choose to do this, not I should. I want to do this, or I would do this, or I will do this. Words that give you a choice. Should takes away choice. That backs you in a corner. Would, could, want to, will, etc. give you options. Realistic expectations and be clear. Now, some people say, oh, expectations are just resentments waiting to happen. And that is actually an old AA line that I hate. And I've told people in all kinds of 12-step groups, I hate that line. It should be unrealistic expectations are resentments waiting to happen. We all have expectations. When I flipped on the light switch, I expected the light to go on. If I am raising my child, I expect myself that I have to do things sometimes I don't want to, like clean up poop, right? So there are realistic expectations that I signed up for, that I'm clear on. What's really hard a lot of times, though, is people put expectations on us, or we put expectations on others, or we put expectations on ourselves that we've not made clear. So make those expectations clear, and are they realistic, right? So, for instance, the expectation, it might, you might say to yourself, I have an expectation that if I work hard at my program, I will be able to maintain sobriety. That's a reasonable expectation if I do X, Y, and Z. Now, it's not a reasonable expectation to say, I expect that I will never have another craving. It would be nice if that would happen, and I hope it does, but that's not a realistic expectation. And it also, figure out positive ways to motivate yourself. What do I want, not just what I don't want or what I should or shouldn't do. Labeling, we're moving into the last two, and then I'm going to go through this process. Labeling is an extreme form of all or nothing thinking. And remember, all or nothing thinking, seeing things are in black and white or extremes. Things are all right or all wrong. There's no in between, this way or that way. No and in here. This is where you apply negative labels to yourself or others. Really, this is name calling, right? So instead of, wow, I was really lazy yesterday, and this happened to a lot of people during this pandemic. I was really lazy yesterday. I didn't even get out of my pajamas. Today I want to get something done. Instead you say, my God, you might look at your partner, you're such a frickin', you're a pig. You don't do anything. Could anyone be any more lazy, right? Can you hear all the contempt seething out of me or whatever? So you apply negative labels. So again, remember how you get away from this. Gray areas, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Big one that's different from some of the others. Label the behavior and not the person. And don't even say that behavior, well, that's lazy. Hey, when you didn't pick up your dishes, I felt unappreciated. When, I get mad when you don't pick up your dishes, and I feel like the story I'm making up is you're expecting me to clean it up. I don't like feeling like a maid around here, and that's what happens when your stuff's left all over. Especially think if you have kids and teenagers home right now, right? So does that make sense? So label the behaviors. When you do X, describe it. Facts, it makes me feel Y, and here's what I'd like. request for behavior. We talked about that in our communication section. You noticing how a lot of these things just tie together really well? Okay, so labeling, extreme form of thinking, and our last of the cognitive distortions, personalization, hard for me to say, and blame. Inappropriate blame of myself or others. Now, there is holding myself accountable, and that's a good thing. But just blame, trying to find whose fault is it so that we can point fingers, right? Not so good. Personalization and blame is also about trying to control what's not in your control, okay? And it's a deflection. It can be a deflection of responsibility. So remember, blame is powerless, whereas responsibility makes you powerful. You need boundaries to help with this personalization and blame, and the serenity prayer helps. What's the serenity prayer? And it was actually a long time before AA that this German wrote this prayer, but and you can have it with God or not God, so I'll leave the God out. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so with personalization, it's like, so you don't blame yourself for the global pandemic because that's not yours. But you do hold yourself responsible if you call your child a name while you're in quarantine, right? So that's holding yourself responsible. There's a difference. And it's also about not blaming other people. Well, you know, I only did that because you did this. That's really chicken. Hey, I did that because I got triggered. I did that because I felt this way, right? So don't personalize when they do something wrong. Again, that whole labeling thing. And set appropriate boundaries. See, you don't feel the need to blame other people so much when you have an appropriate boundary that says, this is my stuff, this is not my stuff. So those are our 10 thinking distortions. What I want to cover in this last part, and I hope I get through all of it, is this thing called changing your inner chatter. So, first of all, and I like to have these little things, but this one I'm going to have to read some too. So, because I don't have all my examples on my notes here. So, now that we've talked about what distortions are, first of all, if you're going to change what you say to yourself, first of all, you have to tune in, monitor, and pay attention to what your inner chatter is. So actually, pay attention to what you say to yourself. What do you say when you talk to yourself? So you might say, oh, stupid, you're such an F-up, right? Nothing ever goes my way. Say something goes wrong. So first of all, monitor your inner chatter. Second step, write it down. What do I have to? If you try to just juggle it in your head, it doesn't work the same way. There is something about doing it in black and white, something about actually manipulating it on paper where you can see it. You also can then revisit it later to see how much progress you've made. So write down your inner chatter, and you can also identify emotions, sensations. Remember, that's the physical thing. The feelings, mad, sad, glad, scared, frustrated, joyful, etc. And behaviors that go with that chatter. So here's my example. Nothing ever goes my way. I am a crap magnet. I'll be good on this one. I'm a crap magnet. So you might say, what do I feel like when I'm doing that? You know, like, nothing ever goes my way. I'm just, right? You might notice that your gut clenches. Some people notice that their palms sweat. Some people notice their forehead sweats. They might get the little pulse, right? Whatever it is, describe the sensations. What you might be feeling when you feel like a crap magnet, I might be feeling helpless. I might be feeling hopeless. Whatever. I might be feeling mad. I might be feeling downtrodden. Whatever words you can come up with. And then what behaviors you do when you start feeling like nothing ever goes my way, you might find that you quit. Well, nothing goes my way. I just may as well quit, right? It's not going to work out anyways. You might do what kids like to do. I didn't want to do that anyways, right? You get disappointed about something didn't, well, I didn't want it anyways, even though you really did. Don't lie to yourself, right? But that might be your behavior. This is when you might drink, use, shop, get online, all that digital stuff, right? Distract, okay? So monitor your inner chatter, write it down. Now, lots of steps on this page, but then you'll see our little example. Cross out any absolutes. We're going to get rid of that black and white thinking. Truth check. Is this fully true? Partially true? Not true? Okay, so you're going to do some truth checking. You're going to cross out any lies. Then you're going to identify distortions. Remember, we just went through a bunch of them. And cross any remaining ones off that you haven't already covered. So, nothing ever goes my way. I am a crap magnet. I should have written that on my sheet. So, I'm going to cross out nothing. That's an absolute. Ever? Wow. That's really overgeneralizing. Nothing ever goes my way. So, absolutes, all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization right there. Cross those out. I am a crap magnet. Oh, I'm labeling. It's not just bad things happened. Now, I'm a crap magnet. I'm blaming myself. So I could have put labeling and blame here, inappropriate blame. So I'm not left with much. Something didn't go my way, right? What am I going to do with that next? So is that making sense? Take out the negative parts. Take out the parts that aren't serving you. Now, here's the hard part. Well, the next part's even harder. Rewrite it into a realistic statement. I don't want pie in the sky. I don't want from shit-colored lenses to total, hot pink lenses. I want a realistic statement. So, wow. So, nothing ever goes my way? Wow. That parole board hearing didn't go my way. And you can say, is that true? Yep, that didn't go my way. That sucks. It might really suck. I feel hopeless, and I might for that moment, and I know I can get through it. Seeing the realism? You're not denying that you feel kind of hopeless in that moment. You're acknowledging, I feel hopeless right now, and I know I can get through it. Even if they've labeled me a loser, and they may have, I am not just my mistakes, right? So you're not getting into that thinking, and then you make an action plan. Now, realistic example of this, I had a guy who took a ton of classes. I think he had 8 certificates, and he was really turning his life around. He had actually been down several times, had a number of felonies in his past, lots of face and neck tattoos and all that. But you could just see something in him. This time he had actually been out and was turning it around, and then he had to come clean up some stuff, and he got it all arranged. Pier 1 accepted him. It was all looking good. And then it was like, nope, they didn't accept that. They said, nope, you're going down again. And he came into class kind of downtrodden, like, wow, I did all this work. I got into Pier 1. I had a plan. I knew what I was going to do. And I worked really hard for this. But this is what I'm dealing with. So he was realistic. This is what I'm dealing with. So how am I going to deal with it? So he did that. He goes off. He's on his way out of the system. He actually gets out. He actually did call me for a resource when he got out. Very appropriate, right? Not calling to be friends, not trying to Facebook friend me, none of that kind of stuff. Got the resource. Well, then I walk in one day and he's back in. And he's back in on some ticky-tacky little ticket that was old. And the parole board, he went on a Wednesday, goes in, and he's thinking, oh, it's going to be okay, and I'll just get back out there because I've done so well. And they threw the book at him. I mean, it was like that parole officer was just like, mm-mm. And he came in very depressed, came into class. He's like, I wasn't even going to come back, but I decided to. What's interesting is as he talked that day, he started rewriting the script right in front of us. I mean, I didn't even have to prompt him. And by the end of that class, you could tell other people were inspired by him. He actually ended up, and then he got offset. So he was supposed to go before the parole board 1 week, and he ended up going the next week, and it was after July 1st, and the new rules went into effect July 1st. And so he came in class next day, you're not going to believe this. Because I got set back that week, and I had to see him a week later, the rules changed. They can't hold me on this municipal ticket. And people in the class were like, man, all that positive work you've been doing worked out. And he said, and I said, but what's interesting is you got to that positive place even before this happened. So I feel like you could have done this no matter what. I'm kind of looking at the wrong spot now because you have to look at a weird spot here. So I just want you, when I'm telling this story, I realized I just got into it because this was someone who, and last time I heard from him, he was still on the outside, still doing a lot of stuff to change his life. I hope that's true. So it would be nice. I would like at some point to get an aftercare group together where people could check in with each other and could, kind of keep each other going for the people who want to get out of here and stay out of here, right? Because my goal is not to, I joke about job security, the more you come back, the more job security I have, but I really don't need it at this point in my life. So feel free to work me out of a job. And the final step in our last minute of this is actively hold new positive conversations with yourself. Actively. Replace the negative inner chatter with your realistic statements. Identify the emotions, feelings, and behaviors associated with those new thoughts. And then I put that warning. This is the hard work because it is relentless. It's not enough to change these things like, oh, look, I rewrote this thing and it's all good. But then the next day when you're having a hopeless moment and you're so freaking tired of it all and you just want to throw in the towel and you have to keep telling yourself this stuff, but it's not working, Darla. I've tried to tell myself the positive stuff. Well, what you're doing is basically you're taking a really old neural pathway that's just ingrained in there, and you got to keep doing the new one until the old one fades away, and that could take so many repetitions. It's like building a muscle. You're not going to go from this to totally buffed in a day. It takes repetition over time, right? Repetition over time. So this is hard work, but this is what it takes. You do all the steps, and then now I got to keep going with it. So I'm going to challenge you. Do what we talked about. Monitor your inner chatter. Write it down. Look at your cognitive distortions. Cross out all the untruths and the distortions and all of those things. Rewrite a realistic statement, and then practice, practice, practice. I'm going to check in when I see you next time. Have a good one. Bye.